Zeller here for Small Business Digest. There are a lot of surveys come across my desk, but one from Citizens Bank really uh, took my interest, and Doug Sprecker is here today to talk about that study and a little bit about his bank. Doug, welcome to the program.
Don, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, as we ask all our guests, first tell us a little bit about yourself personally, then a little bit about the bank, and finally a website, and then we'll go into the study.
Certainly, I'll be glad to do that. My name is Doug Sprecher. I direct sales strategy for First Citizens Bank. We're headquartered in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we are 124 years old this year. We were chartered in 1898 in a town called Smithfield, North Carolina, and really grew up in smaller communities in North and South Carolina. Over the ensuing 124 years, we've grown to serve 22 different states with 600 branches. We have assets of $110 billion, which places us in the top 20 financial institutions in the country. We're also the largest family-controlled institution in the United States. And so I think our background serving consumers and small businesses in community markets, as well as our sort of family ownership, I think places us uniquely in the center of consumers and small businesses. Those for 124 years have formed kind of the foundation of our organization, and we have a real passion for those two customer bases. In my role as
well, before we do that, Doug, I know
sir.
you're a great company man, but tell us about yourself.
Okay. I am a North Carolina native. I grew up here and have spent almost all my life in North Carolina. I've worked for the bank for 24 years in a variety of different roles. I've been a business banker myself, a commercial banker. I've led sales teams, and more recently, I've helped out on the corporate side. I actually grew up in a small business as well. My family owned 3 auto parts stores in Charlotte, North Carolina when I was in high school and college. And so I kind of know what it's like to work 7 days a week. I know what it's like to sub for somebody that called in sick or somebody that quit the day before. I know what it's like to have business discussions around the family dinner table, because there really was not much separation in my house between our business and our family life. And so I have a personal affinity for that lifestyle because I grew up in it, and I remember the exhilaration when things were going really well, and the pride we felt in running our business. And I also remember some of the fear and anxiety of when times were a little harder. So again, I have some real affinity for those customers, and I think what I try to do in my role today is really listen to that customer base and help prepare our bankers to have conversations with them and to work with them on matters that are of great concern to them. And so those conversations are helpful, meaningful, but more importantly, actionable, so that those customers kind of have some takeaways that they can really use to make their business better.
Okay. And your website?
It's www.firstcitizens.com/small-business, or you can go directly to www.firstcitizens.com and click on the small business tab, and you'll find lots of good information for small businesses there.
Okay. Now let's talk about the study that you're here to talk. That you're here. Okay.
Yes, indeed. So it's really our survey. It's in conjunction with National Small Business Week, and we conducted. This is the 8th year we've done it, which actually surprised me when I went back and looked at some of the history behind it. 8 years goes really fast, but it's the 8th year that we've conducted the survey, and it really focuses on sort of the small business owner's attitude toward a number of different things. Their own success, the economic environment, the plans for their business, gives us a glimpse into the things that are keeping them up at night and the things that they're really confident and comfortable about. And it also gives us an idea of really the things that we would like to talk with them more about so that we're better able to help them navigate through those things.
Okay, having said that, what are the top two or three takeaways that you got from it?
I think there were a number of really interesting notes that came out of the survey. I think the overall perception of business success last year was continues to rebound from COVID, from the height of COVID, where we saw really a lack of perception of success among small businesses, and I think mostly driven by some of the challenges that they faced during that time. But even as economic environment has been a little bit unstable during the past year, they still feel like their business was successful. I think 70% of them are planning for growth in the coming year, which is exciting. And I think it's also interesting because when you ask them about what they feel about the economic environment over the coming year and even 2 to 3 years out, it's not quite as they're not quite as excited about that, and yet still they are planning on growing their business in the coming year. And then I think the other thing
Could I jump in there?
certainly,
And can we go over that? They're saying they're not excited about the economy, but they are excited about themselves. Am I hearing that correctly?
I think that's a great way to put it. And it's important to note that this survey, we don't really ask a lot of questions about why they've answered the way that they've done. And so I can't claim to know what was in the survey respondents' heads, but what I will tell you is based on what we know from interacting with our own clients and what I hear from bankers is that there's this fundamental optimism among small business owners, right? They have a lot of confidence in their own ability to navigate uncertain circumstances, and they've been through it enough to believe that they're going to get through an uncertain economic year. And so I think what you're seeing in here may be reflective of that they're just normally confident people. And the reality is they probably wouldn't be in business for themselves if they didn't have some level of self-confidence about their ability to do that. And so while they're realistic about factors that are going to have a bearing on the business environment in the coming year, most notably the economy and inflation, I think generally they have the belief that they can rise to that challenge and be successful in that environment.
Did you ask a question related to the gas price? Everybody seems to talk about oil, the gas, oil pricing, etc. Was there a question on your survey that even came close to that?
We didn't really get into specifics on that topic. I think inflation, we asked more open-ended questions about what they were concerned about and what they were feeling. And that specific answer did not come up enough to really register as a major theme, but I think it's probably, Don, tied up in their concerns about inflation in general, because I think gas prices are, sort of a symptom of inflation as well as supply and demand.
Well, I've interrupted you enough. Now keep going with your with some of the other takeaways you got from the study.
The other thing that we saw out of this study, and I think it's actually not unlike previous studies. The place that the piece of planning for their business that they're less confident about is planning their exit strategy or planning a retirement strategy. And so I thought that was interesting, and as I think about how we can help them, I do believe that's an area that we probably need to place more emphasis on as we talk with our small business customers. And again, I'll go back to my own experience between running a business all day and doing the books at night and taking care of your personal financial decisions that have to be made in the present, there was precious little time for my father and mother to prepare for their exit from the business. And so that was always a piece of the puzzle that until they really got closer to doing it, they just didn't feel like they had a lot of time to pay attention to it. So I think, when we think about that, we really want to spend some time with our small business customers talking about strategies that we can begin helping them address that. Not that they have to solve it all at one time, but there are probably ways that we can talk to them about how to get started in that planning process, and places where we can come to bear a little more in that regard.
Well, one of the things we keep coming up to is that the sons and daughters simply do not want to go into the business.
I think we see, I think that's probably certainly a part of it. We see a mix of that. And that was certainly my family's situation. None of us, although we grew up in it and we worked hard in it, none of us really wanted to carry on that business. We had other career aspirations. And so that's a very real concern among some. But I think in other cases, there is a next generation that wants to take over, but I think there's still things that they need to think about in planning for that transition, and in planning their own exit from the business. So how are they going to fund their retirement and things like that? And so I think either way, whether you've got somebody tagged, whether that's a family member or a current employee, and some of that you see too, or whether you really don't have a clear successor, there's some planning that has to be done. And I think we have a business advisory services group that actually specializes in working with customers around that. So there are things that they can do, I think, to make sure that they're thinking about that and taking the right steps, even early on in the business, to make sure that they're well positioned when they're ready to enjoy retirement.
Your website again for our audience and how they can see this study?
It's www.firstcitizens.com/small-business. And I don't believe the study is up on the website yet, but it should be up very soon. I know we're working on that right now.
Okay. So let's continue down the road. What are some of the other things that you picked out of the survey? Yeah, I have to tell you, when 8 years ago, when you first studied it, we had somebody on, a woman, if I recall correctly, who did the first study. And so it's interesting. I've been around for 8 years, and you've been around for 8 years. But anyway.
Well, it is. I think the other thing that we picked up from the survey. There's a question that talks about the ways that their businesses are planning to expand. And so I thought that was an interesting question too. And the answer is that it's kind of all across the board, particularly by age groups. And so the younger business owners, the 18 to 34-year-old business owners, really were very split across all the different ways that they were going to work on growing their business. They mentioned upgrading their current facilities and building their employee base, which was certainly a strategy in all age groups. But they also talked about opening new locations, improving their online and mobile capability, and improving or investing in data security. The businesses that were owned by people in the sort of middle group, 35 to 54, really focused more on increasing current facilities and retaining employees. And that was the same for 55 and over business owners, not so much focused in opening new locations, although some of them are planning to do that, or improving digital capabilities, although all of them are going to do that to a certain degree. So I thought it was interesting, and I can't tell you why there's a disparity there, but it was interesting how different age groups think differently about expansion and their plans. And so for me, what that tells me is we need to really equip our bankers to be conversant in all of those areas, because they're going to get questions, and they're going to get requests for advice and help from their clients in a variety of different ways. And so being prepared for that is important for us.
Well, let me ask you this question. We're facing a period where interest rates are going to go higher.
Mhm.
Were there any questions on that, and how they plan to finance their growth or even operations?
We talked about how they were planning to finance, and again, it was sort of a mixed bag. The majority of them that were going to use funds outside their own savings did mention bank financing as their number one. But other sources were friends and family, um, their network of other business owners, and then lastly was sort of dipping into savings. But all that said, not many of them plan on borrowing, generally speaking, and I think some of that may be due to concerns over the interest rate environment. Um, I think that, coming off of a generally pretty successful year where more small businesses did well than not, many of them are sitting on some excess funds, which is great. But they may want to, given the fact that interest rates are going up, if they've already got credit in place at a low rate, they may or may not want to pay off those loans with that cash. They may want to hold on to it given the rising rate environment, take advantage of some of the interest rates for deposits that might be out there, and do something else. So I think, given the individual circumstance of the business, it's generally wise to seek out some counsel about what the options are for financing the growth that you're planning, and making sure that you're taking into consideration all of the factors that might influence that. The amount of cash that you currently have in your business, interest rate environments, access to other funds, and the level of investment that you're planning on. I think, it's always a little bit of a complex environment for the small business owner, and I think, talking with a trusted advisor, whomever that might be, to really get a perspective outside yourself is important, in times like this.
In your survey, did you talk anything about the government loans, et cetera, those massive loans that every government sent out to everybody?
We did not. We got a good bit of feedback on that, and many of the respondents cited the PPP program, which I think is what we're talking
Yeah,
about,
yes,
as yeah, as really the reason that they weathered COVID the way that they did. And when you look at the statistics, I was looking at a survey. I was looking at a survey earlier this week, and really the outcome for small businesses was better than originally predicted at the beginning of COVID. And I think a lot of that was due to the PPP program. They were able to sort of wait out the storm in many ways, and most businesses took advantage of that, especially small businesses, to be able to bridge that gap during the early days of COVID. So I think that was kind of an instrumental program in making sure that small businesses fared as well as they did. Our company was an active part of that, and I think we did something like 23,000 businesses got PPP loans through First Citizens, and to the tune of 3.2 billion in fundings. And so that's no small help, right? That was fundamental for them bridging the gap. And I think the other thing that you saw during COVID was, as always, small business owners were really resilient, right? They figured out a different way of doing business, and I loved kind of watching some of that. It was interesting to see how quickly some businesses were able to pivot and either change their model to a more digitally based model where they were serving clients remotely. Some businesses found a way to take their services directly to the client, in a person-to-person mode. And then other businesses were really more slow to react, and so it probably impacted them a little bit more. But I think one of the keys to small businesses doing as well as they did outside of PPP was their own resilience and their own flexibility and their ability to think like the entrepreneurs that they are. Right? They came up with a new mousetrap when they needed to come up with a new mousetrap, and it was really fun to be a part of some of that with our business clients, and it was rewarding to help them think through some of those things. And I think when we look back on COVID and our response through PPP and the ways that we were able to work with business clients, I think that's the thing that sticks with us as kind of the reason we do this, right? It's the reason we do this is to help people when things take a turn that nobody expected. And it's nice to go to sleep at night knowing that you've had some positive impact like that.
Okay, I don't know if it's in your survey or not, but um, was there different outcomes by different states? I mean, different states did things differently. Whether
They did. They did. I don't know that we saw a lot of difference. It's interesting because we were asking people more about their attitudes and their self-perceptions. And so I was looking through the data, and a couple of things that jumped out at me is while all of the states indicated that they felt that they had done better or that they'd had a successful year last year, Florida was off the chart. Like the business owners in Florida really felt positive about how they had done. Yeah. And so I want to dig into that a little bit more and understand were there things that the state did, specifically to help them feel that way, because I thought that was an interesting call out. All of them continue to rate their states very highly in terms of being small business friendly. And so I think that's a positive outcome for everybody. But I will tell you, it's interesting. The Florida piece was the only thing that really stood out as being wildly different. I think generally speaking, respondents in all 5 of the states had similar answers, and the trending was similar across the states. But I think we selected those states because those are the states where we have the biggest populations of small business owners. And so we wanted to make sure we have our finger on the pulse of what business owners in those states are thinking. But I also think when you look at Florida, California, Wisconsin, and North and South Carolina, they tend to be sort of bellwether states in lots of different national surveys. So we hope we got a good representation of what small business owners everywhere might be feeling.
what were the 5 states?
North and South Carolina, Florida, Wisconsin, and California.
Oh, okay. Are you in New Jersey?
We are not in New Jersey.
Okay.
Not yet.
No,
Never know.
no, because that's the state where the small business people are simply based on our surveys are very unhappy with the state. But that's neither here nor there. We only have a couple of minutes left. What would you like to leave? First off, give your website again, and then what would you like to leave our audience with?
Very good. Our website again is www.firstcitizens.com/small-business. Or again, you can just shorten that and go to www.firstcitizens.com. I think you asked a great question. I think what I would like to leave people with is just, and your viewers know this instinctively because it's who they are, but we love serving the small business community because we think it's a microcosm of all of our customer bases. And we love it because business owners are close enough to the ground to feel trends quickly when they happen. And so we feel like we get really topical information from those folks, but they also are, there's a lot balanced on the shoulders of those businesses. And so I think we love their passion for their business, and we love the intensity with which they approach things. And so it's, for us, it's a real honor to serve those businesses, and it's really one of the great passions that we have as a company.
Okay.
So thank you.
On that note, Doug Sprecker, did I do it right?
You did. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Don, thank you very much for having me. I thoroughly enjoyed it.